Hello, everyone. It's Joe Carrell on the Produce Like a Pro channel. Glad to be with you guys today. And what I'd like to talk about today is equalization techniques. Equalizers, of course, are one of our most used tools, right? We've got them all over the place, our master bus, individual tracks, and for good reason. They're very effective. But one thing that I do in my own mixing, above and beyond what frequency I'm selecting, because that's all really relevant to a specific person in a specific song, right? Are we boosting? Are we cutting? You know, our techniques and the frequency we choose is one thing. But here's a whole nother technique that I've really employed successfully and to getting a better result at the end of a mix. And that is knowing the sonic flavor of various analog tools and using those within my mix, almost like a cook would salt and pepper. And various spices. And so, you know, as mixers, more and more all the time, we are getting mixes that are in progress. You know, the artist, the producer had already had a go at it. They've got it to a certain point, or they even tried to full out mix it and just aren't happy. So they hire a pro, right? And what I get sometimes when I get these kind of mixes in and I'm looking at what the artist has done or the producer has done, is they've used a ton of one EQ. And very often, it's just a very vanilla digital tool. So it really doesn't have any flavor of its own, and it's spread everywhere. So it's across drum tracks, guitar tracks, vocal tracks, sometimes even on the stereo bus, that same digital tool that really doesn't have its own footprint. Okay. That's not to say digital tools are bad. That particular tool I'm talking about, I use all the time. I own it, love it. It's fantastic. I can get crazy with it if I need to. That said, what you will find if you take let's say you got an API, a 550A, and you boost 5 dB at 5K, you do the same thing on a Neve, you know, but which Neve, right? We've had different versions of Neves. You do the same thing on an SSL. Okay, but which SSL? We've had the 4K B, we've had the E, we've had the G, we've got a 9K. You know, all these sound different. What you find out, if you boost 5 dB at 5K, they all have their own sonic footprint. Okay, that said, that's how we can build depth and dimension within our mixes. We can separate, you know, not only do we find which one works best on a drum kit, but as we go across, you know, more and more of our modern mixes, our track counts are getting really high, right? So maybe we have several passes of acoustics or electric guitars. I swear, sometimes I get, I think, 30 different passes of keyboards. So to create dimension and texture and to separate, okay, there are these 3 guitar passes that are carrying this song. How do I separate them in addition to above and beyond what the artist or producer tried to do with using different heads or cabs? And sometimes what I'm finding is they don't even do that. So it's even more reliant on me in the mix to find a way to cause separation. So that's the technique. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the screen here, and we've got a song from a friend of mine, Jordan Pride, even though you're not going to hear his voice because I'm kind of focusing on guitars right now. And what you'll hear is while the track count is very high and lots of things are going on, this is a really powerful moment where there's 2 different passes of doubled guitars, so 4 guitars in total, and as well as 1 synth pass that sounds like a distorted guitar that's playing a melodic idea, and that's kind of carrying everything that's going on as far as like the aggression of this point of the song, right? So here it is. Okay, it's great, right? It's cool. And what I had done in the original mix is I had used, boom, an API. I just felt like that was what was giving me the separation that I needed on this guitar. That was giving me the separation from this guitar. Yeah, the guitars sound very different, but I also needed to create some excitement and get those guitars to pop a little bit. So by making this one a 4K SSL, it sounded different than the other guitar, which sounded different from this. where I was using the SSL channel strip 2, which is, think of it as a 9000. Okay, so what I want to do is show you the difference in real time. So you get the concept. The concept is to use APIs, Neeves, different flavors of SSLs, kind of like a cooking ingredient, right? Let's don't get carried away with just one sonic footprint. If we think about a lot of our favorite mixers of the past that we idolized coming up, they were set down right in front of a big old SSL 4000, and a lot of times it was primarily E channel strips, 4000 E's, black knobs or brown knobs, but a handful of the modules may have been the G series, and as you will hear, they sound very different. But in the racks behind them, they would have had a couple APIs, right? They would have had a handful of Neeves, and the reason is that gave them a different flavor for certain instruments that caused separation and distinction within what we were hearing. So what if I would have chose on this guitar a channel strip 2, a 9K from SSL? Ready? Let's hear what that would have sounded like. That sounds great. It's aggressive, open. I like it. What if I would have used the SSL 4KB? The aggression is different. In fact, this is more aggressive. I hear more of the speaker cone like breaking up. You know, that what we think of as distortion and aggression. I hear more of that. It's more apparent. All right, let's listen to the API, which is what I used in the mix on this one. Very cool. I'm getting that breakup as well, but it's like, say, more focused or something. It's different than the SSL. I'm sure you heard that as well. All right, so here is what if I would have used a Neve 1073 style. Okay, it's great, but it's not as aggressive, right? I mean, it's, dare I say, it's prettier, which is cool, right? Now, then we can put that to our advantage and know we're going to use a Neve where we want a little more glamour, right? It's something a little smoother. Of course, we already know that Neves have a bigger full, bottom end than a lot of other channel strips. So, but we find that even their mid-range aggression is a different flavor than an API or an SSL. All right, so lastly, let's go to an SSL 4KG. All right, it's in the mid-range is so different. It's dare I say nasal. That's why I'm holding my nose. It's got this. It just feels very, very different. It's hard to even put words to it. So what I want to do now is I want to play them all back to back without me talking and telling you what I hear different, and because we all hear things different, and that's great. That's why our mixes all sound different. Is we kind of hear things in a certain way and want to hear things in a certain way. So this will tell you how all these really differentiate back to back to back. Okay, here's the channel strip 2. Bypass that real quick, bring up the 4KB. Hear how aggressive that upper mid band is? Wow. API. Similar breakup, but more focused, right? It sounds a little leaner than the API did below where I'm boosting. And that's probably just a result of the curve. But it's definitely its own animal. Okay, Neve. And quickly, let's bypass those and bring up a 4KG. Yet again, entirely different. So what I want to do is I'm going to play the 4KB, and without talking, I'm going to instantly switch to the G, and you'll hear just how different it is. Ready? Okay, now here's the thing. I know the comments are going to build up below of which one is somebody's favorite, good, better, best. That's not the point, because we could switch to a different type of guitar sound or a different instrument, piano or a strings or a synth pad, and all of a sudden your favorite one would be different. You would likely choose a different thing. So we kind of can build our own sonic footprint by we like in my own mixing, for example. What I do is I start a lot with this, and nowadays, so I can use some hands-on. I'll have the SSL channel strip 2 across a whole lot of things. It's very full bandwidth, and it just sounds like an SSL. I love that sound. And then I will sprinkle in 4KB to taste, but then I will also sprinkle in my Neves. I will sprinkle in my APIs, my digital tools, like I'm talking about, my Fab filter and various things like that. I will have them here and there as well, where I want to be able to boosts and cuts that I couldn't get otherwise because of what these digital tools can do. So that is on individual channels, and that's just on guitars. This is a deep subject. This is just going to be the tip of the iceberg. But I just wanted you to hear with your own ears this concept in action. So now let's switch over to stereo bus, because we can make a big difference there too. All right, I have a song here pulled up that's kind of a pop, dancey kind of thing. And the reason I chose this track is because on its own, it's a little dark. I was really relying on stereo bus EQ to get it over the hump. And I'll give you an example. Needs a little puff on the bottom, needs a lot of detail on the top end. So we're going to accomplish that by... We're going to use 4 different circuits today, because I know a lot of you have different bundles, so I want to use something that you know everybody has. So we have the curve bender here from Softube. We have from Waves, we have a Pultec, the tube version, and from Plug-in Alliance we have the Better Maker, which is a passive, but it's a solid state. And then from SSL we have the Violet. So those are all 4 incredible tools. Any one of them can be wonderful. Okay, but let's listen to the differences, because what I've found in my own mixing is that a lot of us, for example, because I'm guilty, is we have a stereo bus EQ, right? Whether we're doing that on outboard or whether we're doing it in the box, I always use this. This is my go-to guy. And that's not in and of itself bad, but what I've found is by switching between a Pultec and a Better Maker, whether it's hardware or software, curve bender, SSL, it takes on a different nature, and I can find something to best match that specific song. So I don't want that song... I'm not trying to force it to be a thing. I want it to be the best that it can be. And for me, sometimes that's just changing out stereo bus EQs. Now let's listen to an example of that in action. So all 4 of these, we're going to have 4 dB of 12K boosted, and we're going to have a bottom end boost around 50 or 60. I can't make them exact match, as you know, because of the way a Pultec works, but you'll get the idea. Okay, so here's the curve bender in action. Love that high-end detail, right? Love how the hand claps and the snare drums seem important now. Okay, now let's compare that to a tube Pultec. And this is, again, from Waves. This is the Poigtec. And let's listen to that same setting. Sounds incredible, but it's fuller, it's thicker and richer. It's not quite as lean sounding as what the curve bender was right before it. Not quite as shiny on the top end, and definitely you can hear that tube on the bottom. It's a different bottom end thing, right? Now let's go to the solid state version of that real quick. The Better Maker. Okay, my take on that is the bottom end is tighter. Okay, it still has that Pultec thing where the bottom end is bigger than the curve bender was on both of these versions of a passive Pultec style. But this one, as you can tell, it's a different bottom end. It's tighter. It's not quite as full sounding as the tube model was. It's a little more, dare I say, precise sounding. And again, that's not good or bad. That's just, we're trying to get to know the nature of these circuits. Now let's mute that and let's bring up the SSL, okay? love that. Okay, so that to me, I get a great balance of everything, right? Like it's not. I feel like that's maybe the one that has the least sonic footprint. I hear the frequencies boosted that I'm boosting, but I don't hear a whole lot else. Again, that's not good or bad. That's just good knowledge to have. So now, like we did before, let's without me talking as much, I want to go from circuit to circuit and let you hear them back to back to back. All right, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so to me, the attack is being probably the most enhanced by the curve bender, but there's also a lean element to it on the bottom and the lower mids, whereas the Waves Pultec, the tube version, is the fullest sounding overall, right? It's got a big bottom end, and it's more not dark, because we can obviously boost more if we need to, but it's very full, very very full sounding. You can hear the tube doing its thing. On the Better Maker, to me, what I was hearing was a beautiful top end, but I could hear that fullness of the circuit. Right, the bottom end on a Pultec, whether it's tube or solid state, is just a powerful, powerful thing. But it's a tighter bottom end on this than it was on the tube version. Right, you could hear the puff on the bottom end was it just had a tighter sound to it. Again, that's not good or bad. It's what are we trying to accomplish. And the Violet, probably, man, I love it, but its top end was not as kind of not quite as enhanced or present as what the Curve Bender or the Better Maker was. But it was great. It was great. It was probably again balanced. Is a term that comes to mind. So. In a nutshell, that's what I wanted to get across, is that we can make a very signature sonic imprint by changing our stereo bus EQs to match. Are we working on hip hop? Are we working on rock? Are we working on very, very heavily orchestrated things, very organic Americana, bluegrass? So we can find tools that kind of match, the tonality, the scene that we're wanting to set with this song. We can find a tool that does that. So instead of just always grabbing one tool to do, hey, this is our stereo bus tool all the time, and this is our main channel strip tool, let's get to know the tools, the sonic imprint that they have, and kind of diversify our work a little bit to get the most out of our mixes, okay? Happy mixing, guys.